Thanks for joining me today. I'm Corel Painter Master Aaron Rutten, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to use the 4 new brushes I created for Corel Painter in July 2018. That's coming up next. So what you're looking at here is a painting that I created from my imagination using these 4 brushes and a couple of blenders. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can use these brushes to make a similar painting. You can download these brushes now at aaronrutten.com. Let's go ahead and get started. The first brush is found in the Effects palette, and it is called Glow Ground. I've gone ahead and created a new layer that's set to a screen composite method on top of a black background. I'm going to go to that layer 1, and I'm going to choose a dark gray color, maybe something like this number 8 value. And I'll go ahead and do a test stroke, and if you're not seeing much, maybe that's a bit too dark, you can go ahead and brighten it up a bit, but you don't want it to be too bright, so you'll have to kind of hunt around to see what gray value is going to work best. We're going to be doing a painting that's only in black and white or monochrome. We're going to start with black and work our way up to white. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the perspective guides. I'm going to make sure that they're turned on and visible and that it's set to a 2-point preset. I'm going to go ahead and just select a gray color here, and I'm going to make my brush pretty big, and I'm going to go ahead and start painting so that all of my strokes are going off toward that vanishing point on the right. If they start going off to the left by accident, just do an undo and make sure that all your strokes are converging over on the right. What we're creating here is kind of a sandy beach. Now if I make my brush a bit smaller, I can put in some finer details, and the more you build this up on itself, the brighter it's going to get. So we want just a few hints of some brighter colors here and there. And then right along the edge where the sand is going to meet the water, we can make it a bit brighter because it'll be reflecting more light there. Maybe a little bit more over on the right side as well, because that's where our light source will be coming from. We can go ahead and hit P, which is a custom keyboard shortcut, to hide the guides temporarily, and we'll just set it to this mode here where we just see the primary vanishing point lines and then the horizon. Now I'm going to go ahead and change my paper texture because this particular brush can utilize paper grain, so you can get a lot of different effects depending on the paper grain that you have selected. Right now I have this worn pavement and I'm getting this effect here. I'm going to go ahead and turn off perspective guided strokes and we'll just do a test stroke and you can see. But if I change that paper to something else, let's say this dotted pattern here, then I get a different texture when I paint with this brush. So you might want to experiment. If you use a very high contrast paper like this simulated wood grain, and you turn the contrast and the scale up, you get something like that. But I'll just go ahead and return to that worn pavement and just put in a few more little details here and there with smaller brushes. The next brush that we'll take a look at is called Glow Fractal. Let's go ahead and create a new layer. And we'll go ahead and just name these layers. I'll name them water and sand. Then I'll choose the rectangular selection tool and I will draw a selection that's right on the horizon there, and that will trap the paint right inside that selection. And now if I paint with a medium-sized brush using horizontal strokes, I can kind of build up this fractal wave pattern. And we'll just go all the way down to the sand and maybe overlap the sand just a little bit. Make sure that layer is set to screen as well for the composite method. I'm going to select an old brush that's called Oily Blender. I'll make sure that perspective guided strokes are on, and I'm going to blend towards that vanishing point on the right. That'll add some little streaks that look like little waves. Now I'm going to select Diffuse Blur, and with light pressure, I'm going to do that same thing just to blend that together and soften it. Then I'm going to go back to my Glow Fractal and just hit it in a few places where I want to add some more highlights and texture. This will look like little waves crashing and rippling, especially here where the sand meets the water. And I'll use a bigger brush just to kind of go over the whole thing, blend it again with diffuse blur, and it's just kind of a back and forth process until you get it looking the way you want. I'll go ahead and deselect that active selection, and then I'll use the blur blender just to blur over that edge at the horizon to soften it. I'll create a new layer for sky. I'll go ahead and use that fractal glow to put in some cloudy textures. I want it to be brighter in the top right because there's going to be a moon hiding. Then I'm going to zoom out quite a bit, go to free transform, choose the perspective mode, and then I'll go ahead and drag out the top to make this nice perspective. Then I'll blend over that with diffuse blur. Next, I'm going to make sure that sky is set to a screen composite method. I'll create a new layer above it called waterline. Make sure it's set to screen. I'll select ground glow in a lighter gray color. And then I'll go ahead and just paint right on the horizon there. Then I'll blend over it very lightly with diffuse blur to soften it. Now we have that nice glowing horizon. I'm going to create a new layer that's called glow. Now I'm going to select the third new brush, which is called Grainy Glazing Airbrush. I'll make my brush a bit smaller here. I'm going to set that new layer to screen. I'm going to select white, and I'm going to paint right on that horizon to make it glow. Now this particular brush can use grain, as the name suggests. So if I select a different paper, and paint, and then I zoom into that, you can see that it's going to have that dotted grain. If I select a different grain, then the airbrush will have that grain. Now the fourth brush is called Fireworks, but we'll look at that in a little bit. Now I'm going to time-lapse this footage a little bit and just show you some of this painting process, going back and forth between these new brushes and a few of the older brushes like the blenders. Now let's add some fireworks on a new layer. I'm going to select the fireworks brush. I'm going to make sure it's set to screen. And with a small brush, I can draw on these little arcing shapes. I'm going to turn on the layout grid just so I can decide where I want to put this firework. And then I'll just draw these little arcing shapes that start from a center point and kind of come down, kind of like an octopus or a spider kind of thing. And just do something kind of like this. So those will kind of be the streaks, and then you could have these little showers of different particles by making these little dots by tapping, and those will kind of be near the end of the streaks. If you make your brush bigger, then those little particles will get bigger. You can just kind of build them up like that. You can make your brush a bit bigger and put a little flare there in the very center, and add a few more little sparks kind of coming off of that. I'm going to create another new layer called Fireworks Glow. I'll set that to screen, and I will use the grainy glazing airbrush just to put in a little bit of a glow there. I'll add some glows on the sparks as well. And I'm just going to go through and tidy up my layers. I'm going to group my fireworks together so that I can move them around later. And then I'm going to go ahead and save. I'm also going to transform into perspective my fireworks so it's kind of maybe showering down on top of me. I'll turn on the divine proportion, and I'll find a nice spiral that kind of works there. Try to line it up with the moon there, and then try to figure out where to put the firework. I think I'll have the firework kind of following that curve over here on the left, and then the moon intersects that diagonal line over on the right. Now I want to bring my focal point into the center of that spiral, which is with this little line here that's going down to that little shower near the bottom of the fireworks on the right side. And that'll be kind of the ending focal point there. So now I'm going to go ahead and just add the finishing touches to this. I might add another screen layer, and I'll use the glow ground to put in a little reflection on the water from the firework that's above it. Maybe a few little highlights here and there on the water too with that same brush, just to help the water stand out. And I'll blend over some of that using diffuse blur. I want to go ahead and move that fireworks up above my vignette that I created earlier as well. And with that, we have a finished painting. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how you can use the 4 new brushes I created for Corel Painter in July 2018. You can download those brushes at aaronrutten.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.